Mitchell, a three is good. Plus the foul. A chance for four. Only three to shoot. Gonna have to make something happen. Clark through the lane, reverses it in. Post feed. Boston. Oh, beats the clock. Wow. Indiana will reset. Clark fire away. You bet.
Hello, Fever fans, and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show, your go-to spot for all things Fever Hoops. I'm your host, Logan, and today we've got a great episode lined up for you as we dive into a road matchup for the Indiana Fever. The Fever head to Baltimore to take on the Washington Mystics, and we're breaking it all down from key matchups to players to watch and what Indiana needs to do to grab a win on the road. We've got you covered in this preview episode, so settle in, Fever fans. Let's get into it. Game 5 of the WNBA season for the Indiana Fever will be on the road against the Washington Mystics, and they will not be playing it in D.C. They'll be playing it in Baltimore at CFG Bank Arena because they are moving their game because their home arena only holds 4,000. They will be moving to CFG because it holds 14,000. So more ticket sales to be had because Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston coming to town and taking the East Coast, I guess, by storm. So I'm excited to see what the atmosphere is like for this game coming up. A lot of Fever fans travel well. There's a lot of Caitlin Clark fans across the globe and across the United States especially. So you will see teams very often move their home games when the Fever come to town so that they can have more of those ticket sales and they can play in a bigger environment. I think that actually favors the Fever some just because you're opening up the door to more Fever and Caitlin Clark fans because you do have people that are just strictly CC fans, or they might even just be Fever fans because Caitlin Clark has arrived on the scene and want to see Caitlin. And then you also have the neutral fans. Maybe they're fans of other teams that just want to go see Caitlin play, and this is in their area, and they're going to this game. It's funny. I've got a friend that's a best friend that's in Maryland in the Baltimore area. And because they don't really have a team that's around them, the Mystics really are their home team. And a lot of the Baltimore faithful and I guess the Maryland faithful do tend to root for DC teams when there is not a Baltimore team in that sport. And the only Baltimore teams are the Ravens and the Orioles as far as professional sports are concerned. So you'll see oftentimes and even people that are living closer to the DC area in the Maryland side of things are fans of Washington, DC sports franchises. So this will be really cool. I mean, I think that you've got really exciting young teams. Obviously, the Fever a little bit more advanced in their progression and their ascension through the league. But I think the Mystics taking somewhat of that game plan and using their draft picks this year to draft two really good players and bring in some great young talent, using some trades and some assets to do so as well in past years. And then basically flipping the script on what they're doing as a franchise, bringing in a new GM, bringing in a new head coach and letting them operate this team. And I would be really excited just by the prospects of what this team can be if I'm a Washington Mystics fan, just because I love the signing of their GM. I love who they've brought in, and I think that they're going to be under good direction. And you look at the youth that they have on this roster, I think that they're going to be good for the years to come. But I think it'll take a little bit for them to build that confidence and build some of these young players. But yeah, let's talk about those Mystics. How did they get to where they are today? When we talk about this team, I'm recording this on May 26th. Oh, happy Memorial Day, or if you're listening to this after, I hope that had a good Memorial Day weekend. Thank you to those who have served this country, had family members who have served this country. Their sacrifices allow us to be able to talk about the beautiful game and understand that that they're without their sacrifices, we don't get to do this for fun. So thank you again for those that have served, or if you have family members, thank them for us here at the Pacers Fever Show. But yeah, where did the Mystics come from? The Mystics are a team in transition. having parted ways with longtime coach turned general manager Mike Thibault and his son Eric, who was Mike's successor and had coached the team in the past 2 seasons. The Mystics will also be without franchise cornerstone Elena Deladon. I think it's Elena. The two-time MVP, seven-time All-Star, and 2019 WNBA champion who announced her retirement back in April. Her decision was not necessarily a surprise as she was not healthy in 2024. And this begins a new chapter for this Mystics team. They had struggled since their title run, finishing above 500 only once since 2022. Or sorry, they finished uh, and above 500 in 2022. But since their title run years back, they have not been a very good team. Mike Thibault's final year at the helm was not good as they started 0-12 and finished 14-26, missing the playoff cut last season. They decided to hit restart and bring in a new general manager in Jamila Weidman and head coach in Sydney Johnson. Weidman joins Washington after 6 years in the NBA league office. Most recently, she had served as the vice president of player development. Johnson, who coached the USA's 3-on-3 team in the 2024 FIBA AmeriCup, has worked with USA basketball for the past 5 seasons. Johnson was an assistant coach with the Chicago Sky last year. So Sydney Johnson has a lot of experience with really good teams and coaching in the U.S. basketball system and working with USA basketball for the past 5 seasons. So she knows what good talent looks like, what it takes to build competitive teams on a national level, but also international level, and understands the importance of development of young players and getting them into a system that works. But then you also have Weidman, who, again, having worked in player development, being the vice president in player development, she's been around a lot of young talent. How do you get the best out of those young players? What's the importance of getting these young talents right out of college, even on the international scale, bringing in youth to excite a fan base? And I think she's done just that as we start this 2025 season, and they've gone and gotten 2 rookies that I think are going to be a force and are already a force in this league, in Sonia Citron and Kiki Irafin. I feel like to get those 2 in the same draft with 3rd and 4th picks, uh, just a tremendous job by this front office already. So I'd give this front office in their first couple of months in doing this an A+, and I think that that's something that the Fever admire because they've done a similar thing with back-to-back number 1 overall picks and picking Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark. We know just how important it can be and how much it can frame or it can reframe what your team is all about, and also just hitting a reset and bringing in youth. I think it excites a fan base, and what was a closing of an era and a really good era, having won a WNBA title. I think moving on can be scary. It can be um, awful at times just because you have to watch a team that's typically not as good, not as competitive for a couple of years as they're starting to rebuild and ship out different pieces so they can get younger and get more draft capital. But I feel like the way that they've hit reset has almost been to where they didn't have to completely tear this thing down to rebuild. They've got some really exciting young talent built in and around them already. And then you have a really good player in Brittany Sykes. So again, I don't think that the Mystics were in like total sell off, awful rebuild. Look at what other teams around this league are doing, right? When you talk about Dallas, uh, Connecticut at this point, you're looking at teams that are in the complete real rebuild mode, whereas the Mystics arguably could be in the conversation as far as playoff contention. Now, I don't know if they can really make a run in the playoffs, but I think challenging for that 8th spot is not too far off from what this team can do just because what they've done with their offseason and their draft picks and then their ability to move some of these players down the road could really help them and be really competitive and kind of set yourself up for a competitive window coming up in a year or two. I think that that's something that the Mystics can do, and that's very realistic, and that's something the Fever are going to have to deal with two of these really young players that have burst onto the scene and had a really nice beginning to their WNBA career. In the offseason, the Mystics traded veteran guard Ariel Atkins to Chicago for the number 3 pick and future draft considerations. Atkins led the team in scoring in 2024, averaging 14.9 points per game in 29.9 minutes per game. She also pulled down 3.4 boards and dished 3.1 assists with a team high 1.5 steals per contest. Golden State then selected fellow guard Julie Van Loo in the expansion draft, so she moves on. And then Maisha Hines-Allen signed with the Dallas Wings in free agency. So big pieces leaving, but really nice pieces coming in. The biggest concern for them coming in from the off season and into the the preseason and into the regular season is the point guard play. The position was already a weakness before number 6 pick Georgia Moore, Washington's potential starting point guard, suffered a season-ending ACL injury in practice. Holdover Jade Melbourne and journeywoman Sug Sutton have stepped into that role in the preseason, and then now have stepped into that role to start the year. And if you look at the games started, Sug Sutton is getting those minutes as their point guard. That is one position that it's really tough when you lose a player that is a very promising young talent and a number 6 overall pick, and somebody that I felt could have really taken this team to being very competitive for a playoff spot this season. I feel like that is just one position you cannot afford to lose. You can't really afford to lose a lot of star players, obviously, but point guard, that's that's tough because that's your floor general. I mean, that is a brutal hit to a team to even begin the year, and for it to happen, it's just awful. I mean, you never want to see anybody get injured. And then the worst of it all was it was in a practice that it's a season-ending ACL injury that occurred during a practice where, again, you're giving your all most of the time, but it's just unfortunate, really, really awful. And we'll give our thoughts to Georgia as she tries to recover from that, because I feel like she's a special talent and a gifted young lady. So we will see what happens when she returns and what that looks like next season. But the development of rookies, Sonia Citron and Kiki Irafin, who were drafted number 3 and number 4, respectively, are going to be vital to what they do offensively and defensively. Both of them offering size, good defensive abilities. And that's huge for rookies to come in with size and physicality, because you don't often see that. But I feel like both of them come in with obviously they're not up to the strength of veteran players and some of the bigs and some of the guards that they'll go up against. But for people coming in their first year, both of them are very physical and have good strength. So I think they could both really take off this season, and we've seen them perform really well so far in the 5 games that the Mystics have played. It's also going to be up to players like Brittany Sykes, Stephanie Dolson, Shakira Austin, and Aaliyah Edwards to lead the Mystics into this new era. Sykes, a 4-time all-defensive team member, very, very good defensively, missed 22 games due to an ankle and foot injury. Shakira Austin, a force inside at 6'5", played only 12 games due to a lingering hip injury last year. So this team has dealt with their fair of injuries to start the season. They were all banged up. I mean, Brittany Sykes has been banged up. Who else? Somebody else was on there. Aaliyah Edwards has had a low back contusion. Shakira Austin is in concussion protocol, and she missed the game on Sunday. So a lot of injuries and players that find themselves often on the injury report, which is it's hard to build around players that are missing a lot of times, and that's not really their fault. But and this is a conversation that I have often with people is, and I love this saying. I love it. Your best ability is availability. and it's 100% true. I am a strong proponent in, and this is not typically obviously the player's fault. It's the player's body and just what they have to go through, and a lot of it becomes luck or you become unlucky with injuries. But that being said, that is still when you're building a team, that is still something you have to look at and you have to understand. And if you are a GM or if you are an owner or even if you're a fan, you got to understand you cannot build around somebody that is injury prone, because the minute that that becomes a problem, then you've built this team around a team or a you knew well, um, or you knew going in and you understood the risk. You took the risk and you decided to ignore that. And it's not fair to just have players sit in free agency because they're injury prone. And like, well, we don't trust you. Obviously, teams are always going to take flyers on these people. But that being said, it's not a knock against the player. But as a GM, like this would be going in and trying to buy a car, and the car is always breaking down, and you're like, you know what? I still think it's a good buy, so I'm going to go buy it. You got to know the risk. You got to know that you'd be driving to work and you could break down on the side of the road, and that car is going to constantly do that, cost you thousands of dollars. Same kind of thing with, that analogy with players. You pay these players a lot of money, and to no fault of their own, usually they do get injured, and they're injured quite often. But the research, right? There's so much data and so much analytics now that, and the medicine has taken the advancement in medicine has been so great that when things are going to go awry, when you're signing up for a 2-year player or 3 year of a player or four. I mean, you look at football. I mean, football's a really good example of this. You know what you're signing up for when you get a running back that's going to last 4 years, and that's about it in their prime. You know that people that deal with knee injuries are probably not going to play a whole ton throughout their career. You just know. Like, so when you're looking at teams, that can be a knock. And I know it's awful because it's injuries and you're talking about someone's livelihood and someone's career, but you got to know that as a GM. So that's my thing. And I personally believe that when you sign yourself up for a player that has missed a lot of games, you got to know the risks going into that. And you cannot play it off as like, well, we thought they were going to be healthy. Well, nothing has proven that they have been healthy over a stretch. I'm a Dolphins fan. I'm a big Tua fan, but the things that happened with him with concussions, we know it's a problem. He's only played one full season. That's an issue. But again, the Dolphins always seem shocked when he misses games. So I don't know. It's something about building teams that I think you really have to take into consideration, and a lot of good franchises do. And when you have a good sports medicine or you have a good doctor on staff, maybe that's when you take those risks. But I think sometimes we just get so caught up in these players that just don't play enough games. And I think teams try to ride on that. And oftentimes it does not end very well just because of their again, the best ability is availability. So Edwards, who was a rookie forward, also struggled with injuries throughout the year, including a broken nose, a right ankle injury, lower back pain. She only missed 6 games, largely coming off the bench for the Mystics and producing 7.6 points per game and 5.6 rebounds in 21 minutes. The UConn grad was a very, very efficient scorer with the Huskies, um, averaging nearly 60% from the field. And then in the WNBA, she's just as efficient. I mean, she's been great. But again, health wise, she's played through it. I mean, kudos to her. She is tough. She's always been tough. I really like watching Aaliyah Edwards play, but just unfortunate, again, injuries, and it's all luck at some point. But yeah, defensively, Edwards is also very impressive, recording 27 blocks, which landed her in the league's top 20 in her rookie year. It's going to be fascinating to see how she develops and how much they rely on her, because she did just return from her injury this season and has played now. And she entered the game off the bench. So they're trying to get her back up to speed. She's played one game. She played 15 minutes on Sunday, got 6 points, had 7 boards. So she is somebody that I think as the season goes on, if she stays healthy, she is somebody they'll look at to move into that starting position, maybe take down a Stephanie Dolson into more of a bench role, because I think Stephanie does a lot of great things and could be even better off the bench in more limited minutes. But we'll see. I mean, this is a team that has very good depth again for a very young team. I feel like they've got some really good young talent up and down this roster that they can just keep inserting. They obviously miss having a point guard that is an absolute floor general, but I feel like with the way that Brittany Sykes has been playing, with Sonia Citron and then Sug Sutton being able to step in to at least be serviceable in that role, that they could easily make a playoff. So we shall see as the season goes on. But outside of Dolson, who's entering her 12th season, the Mystics core of front court players is extremely young, having played 3 or fewer seasons each. So another year of experience together will be a huge difference for Washington. So you'll expect to see Dolson, Austin, and Edwards at the heart of the rotation with rookie Citron. You'll also have Engstler and then Kone and rookie Irafin filling in those gaps. Um, like I said, I mean that they've got good depth. I mean, I'm looking at this team, and the more that we've talked about them, the more that I've watched this team play. I've watched a few of their games now. They've just got this ability. They play fast. They play young basketball. They really do. They're exciting at times. They're hard to watch at times. But they've been very competitive in their games against pretty good teams, which, that's difficult to do as a young team. They're the youngest team in the WNBA. And they've had some really good games against, like I said, uh, top teams. And one, and for instance, is the Aces. They played them very well early on in a season, or a couple games ago. And to challenge them and then to play well against Golden State, who Golden State looks pretty good. And then and these are all away games. They've played 4 straight away games. They've won only one of those away games, but they also beat a Dream team that I felt the Dream are very good. The Fever struggled with them at home, but yeah, I mean, they've had a nice start, I felt. And this is crazy. The point differential between in all of these games, they won against Atlanta by 4. They won against Connecticut by 5. They lost to Golden State by 2, lost to Vegas by 3, lost to the Phoenix Suns or Phoenix Suns, the Phoenix Mercury, the Connecticut Sun. That's what I was trying to say. Phoenix, they lost by 6, and that was on Sunday. But again, like, that's got to be in a 5 game stretch, that's got to be one of the lowest nets possible, like point differential possible. That's 5. So that's 4, 5, 9, 11, 13, 19. 19 points have separated them in the 5 games that they played, whether they win or lose. That's crazy. Like, the point differential in those games, like, those are so close. Those are a ton of tight games. Like I said, though, I mean, you're going up against a Vegas team who people have in the top 3 of the WNBA. Golden State's been really good to start the season. Atlanta Dream, people have them kind of ranked in that 5-6 spot, maybe even a little bit lower, but they've been pretty good. So, and then the Mercury have played well. So, I mean, this team, they've hung in there with some of the best. Now they're going to get a real test here soon. Listen to this. The next 4 games for the Mystics, the good thing is 3 of them are at home. So they've got obviously the home game against the Fever on Wednesday, the 28th. Friday, the 30th is against the Liberty at Washington. And then they go to Indianapolis on June 3rd. And then they head back home and play the New York Liberty again. So they've got Fever, Liberty, Fever, Liberty. Those are 4 very tough games for this young team. And they're going to get to figure out a lot about themselves. They're 2-3. And if they can win 2 of those games, I mean, I feel like they'd come out of that feeling great. If they can split those games, or even if you come out with, a win against the Liberty, or a win or 2 against the Fever, like, I don't know. I feel pretty good about that if I was a Mystics fan or a Mystics player. And especially with young players, you want to build confidence. You want to stay in these games, and I think they've done a real nice job of that. The buzzword on media day, and this is alluding to just kind of the style you'll see with the Mystics and how they like to play the game. They like to play with tempo. When you have a younger team, when you have a pretty deep team, when healthy, they're going to run bodies at you. So that's something that the Fever are going to have to deal with. But the Fever have been pretty good defensively, and we'll talk about that because I was actually shocked by looking at the stats yesterday. I was looking at how the Fever have been, and one of the better teams defensively in the league. So this will be an interesting matchup, just because the Mystics like to get out and run. Um, do go through these lulls just because I think the youth, but do have some really nice offensive players that I think the Fever are going to have their hands full. What else? Last year, the Mystics finished sixth in the league in pace and ninth in the league in offensive rating. So focus on speed and running up the court. I'd imagine that the Mystics will finish in the top 5 in both this season, which could end up being very good for them. I think with a younger team, they typically do struggle to defend at times. So we shall see. I don't know if they can get in the top 5 in offensive rating. I think 5 in pace is doable. I don't know if I mean if you're 5 in pace, you're probably going to have a good offense, but maybe an 8th or 7th spot offensive rating. But like I said, I really do. I think that this team is a cusp playoff team. I think they could get the 7th or 8th seed. I would not be shocked by it, just depending on what they do too. I think if we get to a trade situation, if Brittany Sykes is moved on for more valuable draft capital or youth, which I think it could be very likely, to move off her contract if they start to go a little bit south. And we'll see how that goes over the next couple of games, actually, like to see where they are at the end of this 4-game stretch. If they lose 4 straight, then that takes them all the way to 2-7, and that's a pretty rough start. But I do feel that Brittany Sykes is somebody that we can watch as far as if a contender needs a really good guard, that they make a move for her. And with such a young team, I wouldn't be shocked if it doesn't happen this season, maybe in the off season where maybe they move off of Sykes and try to get some return for her. So that'll be something to watch, I think, if you're a Mystics fan. But overall, if you're coming into this game as the Fever, some of the keys to this game. So let's talk a little bit about what the stats look like for the Mystics, and then we'll talk more about the keys, just because I think that fits well here. Brittany Sykes, 22 points per game. So she has been great. She is a 80% free throw shooter, so she does get to the line quite a bit. She shoots 11 free throws per game, which is a good clip. She has missed a game due to injury. Field goal percentage, not great. She shoots 35% from the field and only 30%, 29% from 3. She does attempt a lot of shots on this young team because I know she probably feels like she has to carry the load offensively. She's a really good distributor. She has 5 assists per game. She's very active defensively. Again, she's a 4-time defensive, all defensive team in the WNBA. So she will, I imagine, get the Caitlin Clark assignment. I think she will guard Caitlin. But then look at the rest of this team. Sonia Citron, 21 years old. Kiki Irafin, 21 years old. Jade Melbourne, 22 years old. Leah Edwards, 22. Sug Sutton, 26. Stephanie Dolson, the wily veteran, 33. Emily Angstler is 25. Shakira Austin, 24. Lucy Olson, 22. And then Sika Kone is 22. That's nuts. Like, there's only 3 players 25 and up. That's craziness. I mean, that's a young team. So that's exciting, though. I mean, Mystics got an exciting team over there. But yeah, I think if you're looking at production offensively, it's going to lean heavily Sykes. But then, listen to this. Sonia Citron, 15.4 points per game as a rookie, shoots 89% from the free throw line. She is a 47% 3-point shooting guard. which is nuts. She only takes 4 a game, but she shoots close to 50%. Um, Field goal percentage, crazy. She shoots on average about 9.4 shots a game. She hits 5, and that would mean a percentage of 53%. Wow. And she is a bigger guard. It'll be interesting to see who they match up with her. I mean, I imagine it'd probably be, when you look at here, I guess, could you put Kelsey Mitchell on her? I don't know. But anyway, Kiki Irafin, 13 points per game, 13.8. She is a 79% free throw shooter. She gets to the line, shoots about 5 per game. And then her field goal percentage, very high as well, 51% from the field. She does not take 3-pointers. I don't think she's shot one yet. So she's not a 3-point shooter, not really a threat from the outside, but is an absolute force when you're talking about scoring on the inside. And then total rebounds, 11.2 per game. She gets 3 offensive boards per game, so that'll be something that the Fever will have to deal with because they do struggle with grabbing boards in crucial moments. So I think that'll be interesting to watch. Jade Melbourne, 10.8 points per game. She is a 47% 3-point shooter. She shoots right around 4 per game, and she hits it right around 2, which is absolutely insane. Gosh, they shoot really well. 48% from the field. She averages about 7 shots per game, and she makes about 3.6. So, I mean, this is a highly efficient group. Aaliyah Edwards in her first game, she was 2 of 3 from the field for 66%, grabbed 7 rebounds, and she scored 6 in her return. Sugg Sutton, 5.8 points per game. And this is where you see a quick drop off. You've got the really good Brittany Sykes, but I mean, other than that, I mean, Sonia Citrone's that's a really good average for a rookie. But I think the Fever can match these players, and then after about the fourth, it drops off pretty quickly, depending on what Aaliyah Edwards can provide and how many minutes she's playing. She can be a 10 plus per game if she plays more minutes, I think. But again, I think the depth, while there's a lot of young depth and exciting depth, I'm not sure that it's enough really to keep up with some of these other teams, and we'll see. But again, I think with Sugg Sutton being your starting point guard, who only averages 5.8 points per game and 2 assists per game, I mean, you're relying on a lot of other people like a Jade Melbourne to come in also and play some of that and take some of that role of being the distributor, along with Brittany Sykes, who can also play point, but also will be a number 2 or 3. So again, I just feel like this team, while good and still very young and still a lot of room to grow, and getting a point guard back, I just think that this team is going to struggle late in games just because they're young. They're going to struggle at times offensively just because when you rely so heavily on younger players, it can get into ruts. The confidence level can be shaken pretty easily. And with Sonia Citrone and Irafin being your 2 and 3, I mean that's a lot of pressure to put on 2 rookies to carry the offensive load like they do. So that is something that the Fever can exploit, is just the youth. I think that'll be a key in this game, just because when you're playing a younger team and they want to play fast, if you play even faster, it can oftentimes be damaging because you see a lot more turnovers when younger teams play fast. You see a lot of decisions being made by that team that don't typically go as well when you're playing against a more experienced Fever team that also like to push the tempo. But looking at the Mystics overall, as far as team stats, so they are 8th in scoring at 78.4. The Fever are at 88 and are second in the league in scoring. Field goal percentage, the Fever at 46.1 are in third in field goal percentage in the league, but the Mystics not too far off at 43.2% from the field. 3-point percentage, the Mystics are the number one team in 3-point percentage. However, that being said, they're 11th in the amount that they attempt. So they hit the threes they take, they just don't take a ton. So that is something of interest. The Mystics have made second most free throws per game. And then if you look at attempted, they're also first in the league and free throws attempted, and they're fifth in free throw percentage, which is great for a young team. I mean, that's another thing where, younger players typically tend to not be as good at the line. Rebounding, the Indiana Fever are actually second in the league in rebounding, even though there are times where we question their physicality and ability to grab boards. They've been really good. I mean, they went up pretty well against that Atlanta Dream team who leads the league in rebounding. But the Mystics are not too far off. They're 35.6, and they're good for fourth in the league in rebounding. Team assist, the Indiana Fever are fifth and 19.5. Mystics ninth, 17.6. Looking at the turnovers, Indiana Fever are fifth in the league with 13.5 turnovers per game. And then, like I said, with a very young team, they're going to struggle turning the ball over. It's just the game's faster than they're used to. They don't make as good of decisions, and there's a lot of experience that goes into not turning the ball over. They're 12th in the league, which is second worst at 17.8. So the Fever could really do some damage defensively. In steals, the Fever are 10th at 6.5. The Mystics in 11th at 5.0. But the other thing I wanted to really emphasize was their defensive and offensive ratings. So the offensive rating for the Fever, 105.1. So a really good offensive rating, third in the league, a very, very good offensive team. They score extremely well and efficiently. The Mystics are eighth at 97.3. Defensive rating, this is where I was shocked. The Fever are the third best team defensively in the league at 93.2. The Mystics, pretty good at 98.5. So that net rating, pretty good for both teams. The Fever in second, net rating at 11.9. And then the Mystics are at ninth at minus 1.2. Very good for a young team. Again, I'll keep saying that and reiterating that fact is just that the Mystics have been a lot better than I think a lot of people thought with the amount of youth that they have on their team. The pace, the Fever lead the league in pace at 100.95, and the Mystics are seventh at 36. This is where the emphasis with Sidney Johnson in the offseason was that this team was going to get out and run, and they have. They've been really effective at it too. But I think the turnovers are probably what bite them, and the ability to get rebounds at a consistent level with some of the top teams that they're going to go up against. That'll be challenging for them. But overall, I mean, you got to be really impressed with what the Washington Mystics have done so far. I would say outside of really the Valkyries, the Mystics are the other team that I would say are a shock, right? An expansion team is usually a shock, but also a team that's really young, the youngest in the league at 24.8 as far as average age. That's a young team, and they are outperforming and exceeding expectations, and that makes them a very difficult matchup for the Indiana Fever. So if you're the Fever, what do? Well, you slow them down, or you make them play to your pace. So you can slow them down offensively, and by that I mean getting into that full court pressure, drop into some of that zone, make Sonia Citron that ball handler, or make one of the rookies try to get involved as much as possible to try to bring the ball up the floor, keeping the ball out of Brittany Sykes' hands as much as possible, and don't allow her to break down the defense and get open shots and get into the lane. That's going to be key, because if you take away their veteran and force the rookies to make the plays, oftentimes that'll win you games just because the experience. And we've seen that even with Leah Boston and Caitlin Clark. Boston in her third year, Clark in her second, that when you speed them up, it can get uncomfortable at times just because they're not experienced enough to really handle some of these changes that teams throw at them, or some of the focus that some of these teams throw at them, because they're younger in this league. It's going to take them 3 or 4 years to really figure out the league. So again, I think slow them down to where they're not running out a ton, But also, if you're going to play your pace at an extremely high pace, then make them play so fast that they get confused, right? I think that's what happens when you got two teams that play with pace. One can outpace the other, and I think that the Fever clearly can outpace this Mystics team, and maybe that's the way you go. But if you're figuring out that they're sticking with you pretty well with the pace, then just try to slow them down, right? If they're keeping up with that fast pace that the Fever want to play, and it's benefiting the Mystics some, maybe that's when Stephanie White looks into going more of that full pressure into that zone that they ran. I believe it would get, yeah, it was against the Dream, where they kind of drop back into a matchup zone or like a 3-2 zone where they really slow down the perimeter players, because I feel like they've got some decent post players, but not anybody that Aaliyah Boston can't handle, or I guess Lexi Hull, who's going to be guarding some of the bigger forwards, or really battling on the inside. Um, because I think that's going to be key and what the Fever do, and how they manage this Mystics team, who, they're going to be playing in a bigger crowd, and it might be more leaning towards the Fever, but they're going to be playing with more Mystics fans probably too in that environment. So you're going to want to take advantage of um, the energy that you can put out of the building as quickly as possible. But also, there's going to be some energy with Caitlin Clark there that are just there to watch Caitlin. So maybe use some of that to your advantage as well. Um, but yeah, I think if you're the Fever, you either outpace them, or if they're playing and being able to match your pace, then you slow them down, which is really confusing to say, but you probably get it. Defend the rookies again, force them to make plays. 15 turnovers. Um, sorry, it's up to 17 now. I typed this out yesterday, but over 17 turnovers per game for the Mystics. So defensively, with how good the Fever have been defensively, fly around, get your hands going, be active, get in the face of the rookies. They'll make mistakes. They just will. It's how it happens. And I think with the amount of turnovers and points off turnovers, the Fever really could take advantage here, and make it not a ball game if they can get the Mystics out of their flow of the offense. Fever second best at or sorry, the Fever one of the best this year in stopping teams. And then you got to rebound, right? The Mystics are not a great rebounding team. The Fever are better. So keeping them off the glass, don't let them get second chances. The more chances they get to make runs at you, the more confidence a young player will get. And with a lot of young players in and off their bench, but also in their starting lineup, don't let them have the confidence, right? Make their lives miserable for the first 10 minutes. And after that first quarter, it should be in favor of the Fever, and you've taken some of the home crowd out of it and the energy that will be in that building because Caitlin's there. So we shall see what happens in this game 5 of the WNBA season for the Indiana Fever, looking to advance their record to 3-2 after a devastating loss to the Liberty. How do they rebound? How does this team do when it comes to rebounding against a Mystic team that is in the playoff mix, and a team that the Fever are going to have to deal with possibly coming down the stretch? So really interested to hear your thoughts. What do you think of this Mystic team if you are a Mystics fan? What does that look like? What do the Fever need to do if you're a Fever fan? Keys to the game. What can Indiana do? Because we've had some great moments this year. We also had some not so great moments this year. I think you look back at that Liberty game, things that we can do to adjust from that Liberty game. Um, I think closing teams out is going to be really important. I think there are times where we let up off the gas, which is typical because we're still a younger team trying to figure out with two of our star players being young. I think that's that's been difficult for the Fever to try to figure out. Um, I think when you look back at that Liberty game, obviously, I think getting Caitlin Clark going more in the offense, she struggled the last couple of games offensively. She started to come on in the third quarter and really led the charge, to pull away from the Liberty and what I thought was going to be a really great win for them. But ultimately, I just think the Liberty's experience to compared to the Fever is what ultimately leads them to a victory. Um, I think lineup wise, if you're looking at how the Fever deal with the Mystics, I would say if you're going to, I think this is the plan going forward, is have Dewana Bonner, which was the adjustment that the Fever made last time, which I think was much needed. Lexi Hull was excellent in that game as a starter. I think if you're going forward with that Bonner off the bench, I think you look at it and Kiki Irafin probably sees a lot of Natasha Howard, which I think Natasha Howard's got a good advantage there. The experience, probably the most experienced, more level-headed player on the Fever to be able to handle a matchup like that. I would say Sonia Citron is going to be kind of a matchup. Not night. I wouldn't say nightmare, but I mean, because she's more of a big guard. I mean, I think Kelsey Mitchell can handle her, but we shall see. Slug Sutton, I think Caitlin probably ends up guarding her. Um, Sykes, see, that's the other thing. I mean, does Kelsey Mitchell guard Sykes or does Lexi Hull? I would imagine Kelsey Mitchell would start there, but I don't know. What are your thoughts? How do you think they match? I think Kelsey Mitchell would get the Sykes actually, and Hull would get Citron. I feel like that's a better matchup, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the Fever line up against the Mystics, who guards who in this matchup. But if I had to put money on it, Mitchell will be on Sykes. Citron will get a lot of Lexi Hull, Natasha Howard, Irafin, and then Stephanie Dolson gets a lot of Aaliyah Boston. Caitlin Clark gets Sug Sutton because Caitlin's going to get the worst option probably as far as the offense is concerned and how she defends. But yeah, if I've got, if I'm looking at adjustments that the Fever need to make, I don't really know if there's much except keep playing at your pace. Do what you did. I think they played a really good game. Limit the turnovers. Their turnovers have been just atrocious. And a lot of that's Caitlin Clark, who had 10 last game. You cut down on turnovers, you likely beat this team and you rebound. If you win the possession game, I think the Fever just have too much talent to run at the Mystics. So my prediction, I'm going to go Fever by 8, at least 8. I guess like plus 7.5 if you're on the betting side for the Mystics. But let me know in the comments below. What do you think the Fever do? I just said that, I think. But what do they do defensively as far as the assignments? How do you think they do against this Mystics team that I think is an up-and-coming team? A lot of excitement, a lot of energy in that building when they move it to Baltimore, because when you move to a bigger venue, you're going to get more of a fan base. And a lot of those are going to be Caitlin Clark fans or Fever fans. But also, I think it allows for more Mystic fans to show up too. So I can't wait to see what that energy is like. But thanks for following along if you've gotten this far into the podcast. Really appreciate the support so far. It's been great. We are over on socials at the Pacers Fever Show. So if you want to talk to us about the Indiana Fever, we also cover the Indiana Pacers. Tough loss last night in Game 3. We will be talking about that recap on a podcast that should be showing up on the feed shortly. But we do cover the Indiana Fever and the Indiana Pacers. That's why it's called the Pacers Fever Show. We will be covering them all season long, and as well as the Pacers. So stay tuned. We will try to record preview and recap episodes for each of the basketball games that take place, leading all the way through the postseason and even off-season content as well. Like I said in other episodes, I'm still looking for co-hosts. So if you are interested in joining the podcast, even as a limited time guest or maybe full-time, obviously, we don't pay anything except for just fun. So that is a preface to anything else, the conversations, I guess, that we will have. But if you're interested in joining the show as a host for the Fever or the Pacers or both, just shoot me a message on X, or you can email us at thepacersfevershow@gmail.com. And I can look through that email to see if anybody's messaged about being a host. But it's very hard to do this as just one person, because there's times where I want to look things up while the other person's talking, maybe to get some facts straight or try to adjust some in what I want to say or get my thoughts together. But doing this alone, you talk to yourself for 50 minutes. So again, thanks for following along. You can follow us over on YouTube, subscribe. It is the Pacer Fever Show over there. Subscribe, like, comment, helps people find us, helps the community grow. Also, anywhere you get your podcast, you can get the audio version. If you're not a video fan or a YouTube fan, you can get us wherever you find your podcast. But I usually post the Spotify and Apple podcast links because that's where a lot of people listen to us. But I know there are other platforms as well. But yeah, thanks for listening. Looking forward to this game 5. Indiana Fever looking to get a game over 500. I think they've played really well so far, and I think you take a lot of lessons out of that game against the New York Liberty, and I think this is a great game to go in and beat a good Washington Mystics team. I think this is a good team. So excited to watch their young players as well. I think this is a team that I'll have on my radar as a team that I think I'll enjoy watching, but just from afar, rooting them on because it's always exciting to have a young fan base that end of an era and they look eager to be competitive in this league. And you always like that. You don't like the tanking that some of these teams do, but I've enjoyed covering this Fever team so far though. So looking forward to it. We will talk after game 5. Thank you for listening. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.